Can't grow your ass and work your ass unless you get off your ass. Welcome to Without a Doubt, the podcast, where we explore the transformative journey of breaking cycles and embracing our truest self. I'm Mad, a cycle breaker, a creative, and a sprinkle of reality. If they ever told you to be quiet, sit down, blend in, but you couldn't, this podcast is for you. I'm so happy you're here. This past weekend, February 2nd, one of my grandmas turned 88. I see this grandma on the weekly, sometimes twice a week, sometimes 3 times a week, and we have had a solid relationship my entire life. In January, my other grandma, who's also in her 80s, she has a boyfriend who just turned 92, and I was able to attend his birthday celebration. This all really had me thinking. I should say thinking again about all of the things in life that we actually take for granted, maybe even so on a daily basis. On the weekly, I hang out with people who are over 80 years old. I get to listen to their stories, their daily routines, their process, all of the things, and how they live is so fascinating. Side note, one of my little projects I would love to do is a podcast with these golden oldies, but sometimes even their struggles put me back into my place about how grateful I am to know technology, be young now, and actually enjoy their company. Getting old is a luxury, but also it's something that we take for granted. We take for granted because we all assume we're going to make it to be 80, 90. That's our life plan, right? The hard parts of life, like losing people along the way, life decisions, accidents, obstacles, whatever, the tough parts, whatever things that happen, growing old still is something that we take for granted. No one should have to bury a child, but it happens. It happened to one of my grandmas. The one grandma that has a boyfriend has shown me that there is another life out there. She lost 2 children. She lost her husband. Someone recently had asked her how she isn't heartbroken and sad, and she said it's not that she necessarily isn't sad about it, but she has so much to be happy for right here. She has all her grandchildren, great-grandchildren, her life, her daughter, a boyfriend. She really has been the inspiration for this episode. Majority of the problems that we are facing are first world problems. So often the easiest things we take for granted are our health, freedom, the basic needs, the people that we have around us. Not to say there aren't dark sides to this, the yin, the yang, that is always going to be there. However, how often have you dreamt of a different life, your future life, a different home, a place, an idea? Have you thought about what it would be like to have more money, live in a town that looks more charming? But let's go back to level 0. What about the home you live in now? The space you live, the one you built for you, your little sanctuary of a place. And yes, you did that. You are a cycle breaker. You did it. But don't take that for granted. It doesn't have to be grand. It doesn't have to be perfect. And it just really needs to feel like your home. For me, I have a small but homey home. It is my little sanctuary. I love my home and I love my slow mornings here. And I say this all the time. I don't take that for granted. But oftentimes I imagine what my life would look like where I don't have neighbors and it's quiet and I don't have to hear cars in the morning. That is my vision for my life. However, I drink my coffee and I think about, wow, I've built my little place of sanctuary. And I think we oftentimes forget about that. The amazing things that surround us are always there, but focus now on the present moment. Also, as simple as taking our health for granted, it's something so many people do. So many people will sit on their ass and complain about how out of shape they are. It is the true lackluster of living. It's the excuse to just be and live and sit on your ass. Can't grow your ass and work your ass unless you get off your ass. There will be a time in your life that maybe you won't even be able to move your ass. I was once dragged by my friend's car. I had road rash literally from my ass all the way down to my toes. I could not lay flat on my back, could not put a shoe on for months. I actually could not even work. I had to pull out of a half Ironman that I had been training for, a triathlon that I had been working for and training for over a year. I had never once thought before that I I could get in an accident or an incident. And I took that idea for granted. I took it for granted that time in my life because even now I could not participate in a half Ironman and finish in the time frame. I took my health for granted at that time. How many people maybe even come to mind when you think of people who were born with a disability, an injury, mobility issue? I think of one of my friends who has CP. She works out like a badass. She lifts heavy, and she has never once let her CP get in the way of doing something. I don't know what her mental process is, what gets her through, but I do know that she doesn't feel bad for herself. She doesn't take her health for granted either. And it's because she's moving and doing and actually living. A small blurb on our relationships and the people and our friendships and the things that surround us and the relationships that really do surround us that we do tend to take for granted. We are all living as this main character in our life. Yes, the world does revolve around you. Yes, the world does revolve around me. But we have to be able to communicate and love and give grace when needed, but also take accountability for who we are or the actions we do or do not take. You see, the thing is, we're all living in a universe and we are all living on our own planet. Yes, we are. So when you're like, are you living on another planet? Fuck yes, I am. This is my planet. This is our universe. But what's going on my planet is I am the main character. And I have to send a little alien to your planet to let you know that, hey, I am here, I am well, and I am okay. Or you need to send an alien over to my planet to check in because you haven't heard from me. We take our relationships for granted. We take the people who do the most for us for granted. If you live close enough to your family and you don't see them, you are taking them for granted, especially if you have a great relationship with them. It's easy for us to not see our family that lives close or call or check in. But the calls from your mom, the 20 phone calls you get a day, those one time in your life you may never get. And you'll be wishing, man, I wish I could get those 20 calls. Being able to just call your dad and say, hey, even if there's nothing to talk about, I took those for granted. We take it for granted, our old grandparents, our family, those people. Call your mom, call your grandma, go visit her, go have lunch, FaceTime your nephew because life is short. I do have an episode on Life is Short, by the way. I will tag it in the show notes. But for so many people that are living, maybe not you, maybe not even me, the cycle breakers that we are, because we are breaking cycles and living and attempting to live in the present. But a lot of times the days seem very blah, anticlimactic. And that's because the beauty of each moment is also taken for granted. The lack of living in the present moment is swallowed by the past thoughts and traumas and the flood of ideas of what we don't even have yet, our future. It drowns our present moment. But that moment we can recenter, we can swim up and come up for air, look around, the sun will be there glistening and you can find some gratitude. For life, for breath, for being, the flowers will be brighter and prettier and the water will glisten and sparkle brightly and you will start to see the magic all around you. It's when we stop taking for granted the smaller things in life, the present moment, and living the life that we should be living and the life that we're meant to live. You are without a doubt a badass. Don't you take that for granted. I will see you next week. Happy February, and it is a month of love. Make sure you are giving yourself all of the love that you need. Toodaloo, and see you next week. Bye. Hey, and by the way, if you love this podcast, let me remind you that you sharing this is one of the greatest ways to help my podcast just grow. If you don't already follow this, hit the follow button. Give it a rating. Do something with this that can help this go from where I am now to somewhere greater. You have the ability to help me be a bigger podcaster. I love you for being here, and you can always find me on YouTube, Instagram, or anywhere you listen to your podcasts. See you around and catch you next time. Bye.